Hello, hello. All right. It is day 4 of going live. This has been so much fun for me this week. Okay, but I'm back on my Friday series is what I'll say. I'm back on schedule for my Friday series today. This week I did a series on managing grief during the holidays. And so I put some tips out for you guys on on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And so we wrapped up yesterday giving you the framework that'll help move you forward if you've done all the things that you know how to do managing grief and you still feel stuck during the holidays. And so I laid out my 4-part framework for you. So if you missed those lives and you want to watch them, they're still up on my page right now. Not sure how long I'm going to keep them up. But for today, we are talking about renewal. And I apologize because I forgot to prep y'all and post my little flyer that lets you know what's coming up. But we are talking about part 2 of renewal. I'm going to be doing a 4-part series. I started last Friday, so today is part 2. And we're talking about parenting today. And this is not the first time I've done this talk. And so I know I've talked about parenting a few times. And so I'm going to try to bring in some of the other things that I've discussed when it comes to it. But we are talking about healing the mother wound and how that affects your ability to parent like you want to. And so welcome to everybody that's coming in. If you're new to my page, I'm Anjanika Brooks, also known as the Unmothered Coach. And I help women who've had difficult relationships with their mothers and lost their mothers overcome emotional trauma, find their voice, and regain their power so they can have the life they deserve. And I'm also the author of this book. I almost forgot. My book is called Unmothered, A Daughter's Guide to Acceptance, Healing, and Renewal. So when I refer to my 4-part framework, it's in this book. It's actually broken out into more steps, and I call it the 9 steps of healing. But it's essentially acceptance, grief, forgiveness, and renewal. And so we're talking about renewal today. So let's jump in. The last time I talked about parenting, I think it was when I did a talk called Absent Fathers and Toxic Mothers. And I did that discussion because sometimes we are under the assumption that as long as the mother is present in the home and, it doesn't really matter, as long as she's there, the child is going to be okay. And that absent fathers is more of a problem. And I'm talking loudly. I hope I'm talking loud enough. I have my heater going, guys. I'm cold in here. So let me know if I need to speak louder. But anyway, so I wanted to bring that talk about absent fathers to us because you can have a father that's not there. But what's more damaging is having a mother present and she is tearing you apart. She, isn't showing you love. She's toxic. She's narcissistic. She's, can't support you. She is emotionally unavailable or detached from the child. Any number of things along those lines that you can think of. So I talked about it, and there was a lot of statistics behind it. And so the premise of the talk is this. Being present is one thing. But the quality of your presence with your child makes a huge difference. Can we all agree on that? So the quality of how you show up for your children makes a difference. And so I just want to talk about how healing yourself connects to parenting. Because when you go into renewal, the first part of it is working on yourself and getting to know yourself, being authentic and learning who you are, learning the things that you like and you don't like, figuring out what your triggers are, what makes you happy, how you relate to other people, all those types of things. So my first step in renewal is knowing yourself. But that's because you need to know who you are, be very comfortable in your own skin before you can figure out how to interact with other people. How you relate to others has a lot to do with, who you are and understanding your self-worth. And so we put that first. But then once you do that, one of the very first relationships you need to look at is parenting. So if you have a child, it's important to pay attention to how you show up for their needs, to how you lead and guide them. And so that is why being in the home with your child, being a mother, or even if you are co-parenting or something like that, and the child may move back and forth, or you guys, come and go on a schedule to have time with your children. Even doing that, how you show up is immensely important. And so we have to talk about it. And it's actually my whole reason for writing the book and for coming into the coaching space is because of our children. The children are our legacy. And especially when it comes to mothers and daughters, we need to start having more of these talks, more of these discussions, doing community building, whatever it takes to figure out what the problem is with mothers and daughters. And then sometimes it does carry over to sons. And so some of the unhealed behaviors that can show up, when you haven't worked on yourself, are competing with your child. And that was I also did a separate talk on competing, why mothers coddle their sons and compete with their daughters. That's a discussion I did. Any of these that I'm referring to, if you want me to let you know where the link is or send it to you, just DM me and I can send you those previous talks. But competing with a daughter is a big deal. That's something that toxic mothers do often, and my mother did that with me. She, was very jealous, and she had problems about me going off to school and trying to better myself, and those types of things. Or if I would achieve something or get something, she was so bitter and so broken and hurt by this world and the things that she didn't feel like she didn't get what she needed, even though she wanted certain things. It allowed her to basically pour it all out onto me. And so it was mostly me in the beginning. Later, as my sister and I got older, sometimes it involved her as well. But from as long as I can remember, she was always upset with me and competing with me, and it seemed to be just about my presence. And so that is not the way you want to raise a child, because when you put that kind of pain and that kind of pressure on them, they don't know how to handle that because they're children. And so they can take it in themselves, they can embed it and try to hide it, try to internalize it, and it can cause problems later, as we see now, which is why we're daughters that have to heal if you had a toxic mother and she did those types of things to you. And so competition with your child isn't something that you want to do. There's no reason to compete with your child unless you're playing a game. Unless you're playing, I don't know, checkers, chess, some kind of Mario Kart, and then you're playing with them. That's the only time I think you should be competing with your child. Or unless y'all are gamifying, something in life that you want them to do, and they understand that this isn't meant to hurt them, this is meant to push them. But playful competition is not the same as stuff that's meant to tear them down and tear them apart. So be very careful of that kind of behavior. If you notice yourself doing that, then you need to get some help. One of the other unhealed behaviors is the ability to set boundaries. I talked about that before, but I just want to mention it here, because sometimes what happens when we're not healed is we find ourselves doing what was done to us. And I'm going to talk about this in a minute as, ways that we can fix things. But you'll find that, you don't know anything about boundaries, and you're not teaching your children about boundaries if you didn't have any. And then there's the unhealed part that might cause you to speak negatively to them. And so this is different from competing with kids. This is just when, you just don't show that you believe in them. It is extremely powerful to encourage your children. I mean, I don't know if we all clearly understand what that means. Now, as adults, we shouldn't constantly seek validation, but it starts when kids are little. They need to be affirmed, and they do need to be praised in some amount, because it affects their self-esteem. And so if they don't get those affirmations from you, and then you know how the world is, kids bully kids, and kids are awful to kids. They're not all sweet. And so it's very important in your house how you talk to your children, that you affirm them, that you speak to them with love, that you let them know that they can do anything, because they absolutely can. Let them know that there's no limit. Because there's always a way to do whatever it is you want to do. And if you believe in God, then you know He equips you to do what it is that you're meant to do. So encourage them that they can do anything that they put their mind to, and don't speak negatively to them. And then there's discipline. So you might think that for some mothers, because they're already mean, or they're toxic, or they're into themselves, that they automatically are harsh disciplinarians. And that's not always true. Yes, it's true in some cases that toxic mothers can be very abusive. They can be physically abusive as well as verbally abusive. That is a whole separate talk. Like I said, I've probably covered that one too. But they are not all disciplinarians, meaning I had a mama that was kind of hands off because my grandmother was in the picture. And so when I needed to be talked to or pulled in or disciplined, she really didn't care. She was kind of like, well, if you're going to self-destruct, self-destruct. And so that's not good for children. And yes, that had to do with her competing with me, but you have to be mindful with the kids and understand that, no, you do not have to beat them and slap them and hit them and treat them badly to discipline them. There are other means of disciplining, but you can't ignore them when they need correction. And so be very mindful of that. And that sort of goes in with like having guilt. When you are a child that's come out of a toxic home, or your mother was toxic to you, or you didn't get what you needed and you came out feeling unloved, sometimes we go too far, we lean too far the other direction. And so we don't want our kids to experience any of that. And so because we don't want them to, we give in to a lot of things. We allow the guilt, and the shame of what we went through to affect how we parent with them. And that's not healthy. It's not healthy because kids also, they need boundaries, but they need balance as well. And so you can't constantly not set a routine for them, or you give them whatever they want, because one, you're going to stretch yourself out too thin and not know what to do or how to do it. And two, they're going to hold all the power. And children don't need to hold all the power because they need to be kept safe. They need to be protected. And when they have too much power, it's dangerous for them. It opens them up to harm. They're more vulnerable to different things out there. And so you as the parent should always maintain the power in the situation of keeping them safe, of protecting them. Not in the sense of, I can talk to you any kind of way I want to. I can disrespect you because you're a child. That's not what I mean. I mean the power in terms of keeping them safe and protecting them and teaching them. So you don't want to pacify them if you came out of a home and your mother was awful to you, and because you are still wounded and unhealed, you don't know how to relate to them, and you're giving in to everything that they want, or you won't discipline them because you just feel like that was so difficult for you. So I encourage you in that case to read books, plenty of good books out on parenting, and find alternative ways that you might discipline your child, because discipline is correction. It's not necessarily meant to be like punishment. And this is how I feel about it. It's correcting them. Now, if you need to apply some pressure in a certain area, taking away the games, or in my daughter's case, I would take away the library card. Lord, that child would fall out. But I would take the library card away because she's a book lover. And now a creative writing major at George Mason, but I digress. So you find the pressure points, and it is used to help correct them, because they have to have boundaries, and you have to put things in place that will help them. But we're going to talk more about that in a moment. And then another thing is not talking to kids, and I'm talking about communication. Sometimes, for many of us, coming out of these homes with these mothers that, they were emotionally detached, they weren't available, they didn't have time, we don't learn how to communicate. And we don't learn it because it didn't happen with us. And so we may think that we're ready, but we just need some help, and we just need some work. And I don't have all the answers here, y'all. I just want to say that, and I'm not trying to say I'm the perfect mother and, this is how you should do things. But I have done a bunch of these talks, and I've gathered information from other moms. And I had a great grandma, for one thing. My grandma was amazing. And so I took some things from her. But we're doing this together, and we're all learning. And so I love the library too. That's funny. You gotta know the points, the pressure points to get them. You don't have to hit them. You just gotta know what is important to them. But yeah, so I've taken examples and things from other people, which is why that's one of the things I encourage you to do, is because we don't have the answers, and there is no one book that I think that is just like the holy grail when it comes to raising kids, because you're gonna have a different kid. Every kid is different. Every child is unique, just like we all are. But to become a better parent, you do have to work on yourself, and you do have to heal yourself the best that you can. You're not perfect either, and we're constantly healing because new things happen to us. We're experiencing new things that we have to be resilient and keep moving forward. But you have a right and an obligation to your child to do the work so that you set them up in a better position than where we were. Some of the stuff we received. They are our legacy, and if we want them to be powerful and to be strong, and as I was saying, that's the reason that I do this, is because they are coming, and in many cases they're here. Like I was saying, my daughter will be 20 this month, which is amazing, but they're here and they are taking the helm. And so we don't have time to compete with them and tear them down. We need to build them up, and not just because they're going to make us proud, not just because they represent like your lineage. It's not just that. It's that they deserve it. And the world will change if we do that work. If we lay the foundation and we gird these kids up, and I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm talking about just support them in the way that they need to be supported. If we lay the foundation, then it changes the world. It doesn't just change your lineage and your child and your family. It can change the whole world. And that's what I'm talking about here. That is my whole purpose. That's why I started doing this, is that I felt like if we talk to mothers, if we do the healing, then we can affect the children. It's not that fathers aren't important, but that's not my job to talk to the fathers. So I speak to mothers and literally daughters, because we have to do the healing. If you grew up with a mother that was toxic or narcissistic, you have to heal yourself. And so I wanted to get to us, while we're young, while we're still here, so that we can make change. And so those are some of the unhealed behaviors, the ones I talked about: competing, not setting boundaries, negative talk, not disciplining or disciplining too heavily, being guilty and pacifying the kids, and just not communicating with them and leading them or teaching them. Those are some of the unhealed behaviors. If you came out of a home where those things happen to you, then it's likely that you'll repeat them unless you take a good look at yourself, pay attention, listen to yourself, and then be intentional about making corrections. And so I say this sometimes: if you don't want kids, don't have kids. However, if the kids are already here, don't punish them. Don't punish the kids for being here, because they did not ask to come here. Okay? They didn't ask to come here. And so it is our obligation and responsibility to make sure that we take good care of them. And whether you wanted them or not, whether you planned for them or not, they're here. They're here. And I have 3, and mine are 17, 18, and 19. And that's how he gave them to me. And they are here. They are here. 17, 18, and 19 years old. And so if y'all see me looking crazy in the camera, it's the teenagers. But anyway, so if you want to work on things, I put a post out a few days ago about how you can parent even if you came out of a home and you had a narcissistic mother, or she was very toxic, very verbally abusive, and she didn't support you. There are still some ways that you can parent through your healing. And so one of the things I said was to be yourself. Understand that you don't have to repeat what was done to you, and you don't have to be who she was just because that's your mother and that's all you know. Even if you didn't, have other examples around you growing up. Realize that you can be different. Then the other thing is to set boundaries and respect the kids. That's something that is a point that can cause a lot of discussion. People don't feel like kids can have their doors closed and things like that. I don't believe that. I started out that way, and then I had to learn real quick. Children need boundaries, and they need them for protecting their personal space, their physical body. Mentally, they need boundaries, and we need them to understand why and when, so that as they grow, they know how to conduct themselves and how to protect themselves. But for right now, you are the one in charge of doing that. And so definitely teach them about boundaries and teach them about respect. And I do let my children have a say when we're communicating. It goes both ways. And so one of the other things you can do is ask yourself, what were you missing when you were a child? When it comes to parenting and how you want to relate to your child, think back, put yourself in their shoes and say, what was I missing? Like, what did I need my mother to do for me? What was something that, upset me so much when she would do this? Or, like, was it if she would just tell me no and say, because I said so, and she wouldn't explain? Or if she was unfair and she never wanted to hear my side if it was something with the siblings. So those types of things. Or when you were going through adolescence, think back to puberty and stuff like that. Or when boys came into the picture. Because my mother would not listen to me. It did not matter what was going on. She just was like, she didn't want to listen. She was uncomfortable. And so this is when I started saying, like, I needed my mother to teach me about sex. I needed her to not shy away from that and step in and do her job. And she was uncomfortable with it. And she was just like, well, I'm not going to address it. And that was not good for so many reasons. And you can read my book to find out more. But it wasn't good for so many reasons. But anyway, let's keep moving. And so a big thing to remember as you're parenting is to lead with love. Lead with love instead of anger or guilt. Because if you can lead with love, yes, you're going to be angry sometimes. And yes, you're going to feel guilty if you do something wrong or say something wrong. And we do. But be a mother that can apologize. I know. We did not get that. A lot of us did not have the mama that would say, I'm sorry about anything. I already posted it and did a poll like last year. So I already know that most of us did not come out of the homes where your mama was going to apologize to you. But you can be different. You can admit when you were wrong. You can say I'm sorry. And you can ask them to forgive you if you did something egregious, something that's just not okay. You can ask them to forgive you. And y'all do this thing together. Because that's what families are. We are connected bonds. Okay? It's not, that you're lording it over the children and, no, it's connected bonds. Okay? And so remember that. Try to always lead with love. Because even when they need to be disciplined, even when they need to be talked to, even when they disappoint you, you love them and you want the best for them. And so come to them like that. Okay? And I think that it makes a difference. And I'm only telling you this from experience. I know how I was talked to, and you know how you were talked to. You know how you were spoken to. So go back and think about what would have helped you. And then if you don't know, anything, you feel like I'm out here, I'm just so confused, I don't want to read the books. Look to moms that are good examples. Look to friends that you know. I go back and I grab from the past things that my grandma taught me or showed me. But I also had a mama that took me in when I was in college. She was a woman. I worked in the office with her, and I call her my mama Brenda. I talk about her in my book. But she was just good to me. She had 3 daughters of her own, but she took me in and just loved on me, watched out for me, took care of me. And so I look to her for certain things. Like if I want to know something, I've called her up and said, what would you do in this case? And so it's been a while since I've called her, but I haven't done it. So I'm just telling you, it's nothing wrong with having a good example or asking someone that you admire, what do you think about this? And just seeing if it helps you. And then overall, I think, and I've said this already, communicate. That's when you know when to talk to them about sex. I had somebody ask me, when should we talk to our children about us being unmothered or about us not having a good relationship with our moms? And, about us, not being able to connect and all that stuff. Only you are going to be able to determine when the time is right to speak to your child about being unmothered, about if you had to go no contact with your mom before she died, or about why you can't talk about your mother like other people can. You have to decide when to do that, but don't neglect doing that. It needs to happen if it's coming up. Don't neglect to talk about sex. Don't neglect talking to them about how they should be treated, especially when it comes to young men, and vice versa if you have a son, because I do. Young women, how they should be treating them and how they should treat other people. So let them know about dating. Have those talks about safety in dating. I have a friend on here, her name's Sandra Golden. She has, I think, a page on Instagram and Facebook, and she talks about protecting yourself from dating violence. And so we are our children's, we are not just their parents. We are basically their advocates. We are their protectors. We are their keepers when they're here, when they're small. And we're their teachers. And so it is our job to communicate with them effectively. And if all of that, none of that is making any sense, and it seems like it's failing, ask the kids. Ask the kids what they want. Ask the children what you can do. There's nothing wrong with having that open conversation and saying, hey, give me some feedback. What's something that I need to change? What would you like me to do? How can I be a better parent? And it doesn't mean you have to take everything they say as, is gospel, but listen to them. So communicating is just as much about getting your point across as it is listening to the other person. And in this case, the other person is your child. And so as you heal, you're going to find yourself able to do much more of this. You're going to find yourself relaxing and knowing that generational cycles get broken by making change. Generational cycles continue if you don't do anything. If you just say, well, this is what was always done, well, I'm going to honor the ancestors because this is what they did, then you're going to be stuck with the generational cycles. But where things need to be changed, be brave. Be the brave one and understand that it can end with you. And the new things can begin with you. The better things can start with you. And then you share that with your child. Okay? And that's all it is. It's gonna be constant correction and constant adjustments, and there's nothing wrong with that. Ain't none of us perfect. We're not perfect. But we're learning. And that's what this is. Okay? So that is what I have for you today. This is Renewal Part 2, Parenting Differently. And this is what I think will help you be a better parent, if that's what you're looking to be, or just be one that listens more, one that loves more, more empathetic. All of those things that I know I needed when I was growing up. Okay? All right. Well, guys, I hope that you have a wonderful Friday. I hope you're going to have a great weekend. Get some rest. On top of all the things that you do, get some rest. Enjoy the season as much as you can, because time is fleeting, life is short, and so get in there and enjoy the moment. And I will be back with you next week. We're going to be talking about friends and lovers, because that's a part of healing. And as I discussed, once you work on yourself, then you start to work on those external relationships. First is the relationship with the children, and then next is friends and lovers. So that's what's coming up next week. I hope to see you here. If you need me, DM me and I will answer you back. Oh, I'm so glad that you got something out of it. Thanks for joining, Kim. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.